Walk into any big box garden center right now and you'll see rows of blooming annuals that look perfect today and will be brown, wilted, and finished by late summer. Nobody tells you which plants actually survive. These 17 perennials come back every single year. They handle heat, they handle cold, they handle drought and neglect, and the one at number 12, it actually thrives the less you touch it. Let's dive in. Before we start, drop a comment right now. What U.S. state are you gardening in? Your USDA zone completely changes which of these will perform best. I'll be calling out specific zones throughout this video. Find yours and pay close attention. Plant A1 Sedum. Each leaf of Sedum stores water like a tiny reservoir. It doesn't depend on you remembering to water it, it depends on itself. Established Sedum can go 6 to 8 weeks without water and bounce back without permanent damage. Try that with literally anything else in your container and see what happens. Here's what's wild. Sedum planted in rich, heavily fertilized soil grows tall, floppy, and weak. Sedum planted in lean, slightly poor soil stays compact, colorful, and strong. Stop fertilizing it completely. The plant rewards neglect with better form, better color, and better structure every single season. Top varieties: Autumn Fire, deep copper pink flower clusters from September through November, stands upright without flopping. Dragon's Blood, low growing with vivid red foliage that intensifies as fall temperatures drop. Matrona, tall and architectural with burgundy stems and dusty pink blooms. Zones 3-9, that covers Maine, the Midwest, Pacific Northwest, the South, and most mountain states. Hardy through hard freezes. In zones 9-10, give it afternoon shade during peak summer heat, water deeply once when you plant it. Then cut back to once every 2-3 weeks through summer. When fall arrives, stop watering entirely. The fall color it produces will be the best thing in your entire container garden. Plant DOE2, Lavender. Lavender evolved on rocky Mediterranean hillsides with almost no soil nutrition and near-zero moisture retention. Moisture-retaining potting soil is lavender's primary killer. The soil most people automatically use is what kills it. Here's the fix. Mix your standard potting soil with 1/3 course perlite or horticultural grit before planting. Use containers with a minimum of 3 drainage holes. Never place saucers underneath. That single change makes lavender nearly bulletproof in containers. Top varieties. Hidcote, deep purple, compact, most cold-hardy English variety, survives down to zone 5. Phenomenal, handles heat and humidity better than any other lavender, performs reliably in zones 6 to 9. Grosso, highest essential oil concentration, blooms continuously June through August. Never fertilize lavender in containers. Not once all season. Rich nutrients produce soft, weak growth with diminished fragrance. The essential oil concentration, which creates both the scent and the natural insect-repelling properties, actually increases when the plant is slightly hungry. Neglect isn't just acceptable with lavender. It's the correct technique. You can move lavender to exactly where you sit outside. On warm evenings, brush the foliage gently as you walk past. The oils release immediately. You've got a fragrant, mosquito-repelling personal space that costs $3 in a 5-gallon pot. Subscribe prompt E1. If you're still watching and you're not subscribed yet, here's what that actually means. YouTube will stop putting this content in your feed. Not slow down, stop. The algorithm only consistently delivers videos from channels it recognizes you follow. I release practical, experience-based container gardening content every single week. Content that saves you money, saves you time, and stops you from buying plants that are going to fail before summer ends. Hit subscribe right now. It's free. It always will be, and it takes less time than it just took you to read that. Plant AE3, Russian Sage. 35525. Once Russian sage establishes roots, it blooms continuously from July through October, 4 straight months of blue-purple flowers on silver-white stems. Most flowering perennials give you 4 to 6 weeks of color. Russian sage gives you 4 months. In container gardening, that's the difference between a plant that earns its space and one that just occupies it. No pest pressure. Deer avoid it completely. The aromatic foliage repels insects naturally. And even after blooming ends, the silver architectural stem structure provides genuine winter interest when every other container on your street looks bare and empty. Zones 4-9. From Minnesota straight down through Georgia and across to the Pacific coast, it requires exactly 1 maintenance task per year. Cut it back to 6 inches in late February or early March. That's it. 30 seconds of work. In return, it comes back fuller and more floriferous than the season before. That exchange is almost unreasonably fair. In Zone 4 specifically, move the container against a protected south-facing wall before hard freeze. In zones 8 to 9, it may behave as semi-evergreen, keeping its silver stem structure through mild winters and giving you year-round container interest. One more thing most gardening content never mentions: Russian sage looks better in a container than it does in the ground. The contained root system actually encourages more compact, upright growth than open soil planting. You're not compromising this plant by putting it in a pot, you're improving it. Plant Ebu for hens and chicks. This is the only container plant that actively tries to give you more plants without being asked. It just multiplies on its own schedule and hands you the results. The mother rosette, called the hen, continuously produces smaller rosettes around its outer edge. Those are the chicks. Each chick is a genetically complete, fully independent plant. You can separate it with your fingers, drop it into a fresh container with minimal soil, and it establishes without any special treatment. The mother hen blooms once after several years, then dies. But by that point, she's produced enough chicks to fill multiple containers several times over. The plant replaces itself and expands your collection simultaneously. Top varieties: cobweb hens and chicks covered in fine white threads that look exactly like delicate spiderwebs. Red Beauty transitions from green to deep burgundy as temperatures drop in fall. Pacific Blue Ice produces blue-gray rosettes that look almost artificial. Zones 3 to 8, and that covers the overwhelming majority of the continental United States. They handle hard freezes without any protection whatsoever. They evolved in alpine environments: the Swiss Alps, the Carpathian Mountains, exposed rocky ridges at high elevation with scorching summers, bitter winters, and almost no soil. Your container garden, even a neglected one, is genuinely luxurious by comparison. They thrive in containers as shallow as 4 inches deep. Ideal for windowsills, wall planters, and small balconies where deeper containers aren't practical. Comment prompt A1. Have you ever grown hens and chicks before, and did yours multiply the way they're supposed to? Because some people get dozens of chicks from a single plant within one season, and some people get almost none. The difference comes down to one specific thing: container size and drainage. A hen in a cramped, poorly draining container puts all her energy into survival. A hen in a well-draining container with room to spread puts her energy into reproduction. I'll cover exactly how to set that up correctly in the final section of this video, but drop your experience in the comments now because I genuinely want to know how many people have already been growing these and getting the results they deserve. Plant WE5, Catmint, Walker's Low. This plant blooms for 6 months straight in American containers. 6 months. Most annuals can't manage that. And catmint comes back every single year. From May through October, Walker's Low produces continuous clouds of blue-purple flowers on arching stems with gray-green aromatic foliage. Butterflies are strongly attracted. You'll have visible wildlife activity around your containers all summer without planting anything specifically for that purpose. The foliage releases an herbal scent when brushed that most biting insects find deeply unpleasant. You're getting color, wildlife, and natural pest deterrents from one plant. When the first flush of flowers starts looking tired in July, cut the entire plant back by half. It looks severe for about 10 days. Then it comes back with a second flush that's often heavier than the first. You get 2 complete bloom cycles from one plant in a single season. Most gardeners skip this cut and lose 6 to 8 weeks of color every summer without understanding why their catmint underperformed. Zones 3 to 8, fully cold hardy, needs water only once weekly once established, even during peak summer heat. In zones 8 and 9, afternoon shade prevents the foliage from burning in extreme heat. Now compare catmint directly to petunias, the most commonly purchased container plant in America. Petunias need deadheading every few days, weekly fertilizing, complete replacement every single year. Catmint needs 1 trim per season, no fertilizer, and comes back stronger every spring for years. The only reason more Americans aren't growing catmint in containers is that garden centers make significantly more money selling you petunias annually. That's the honest answer, like button prompt. Right now, I want you to do one thing before we go any further. Hit the like button on this video. Not for me, because every like tells YouTube this content is worth showing to other gardeners across America who are spending money every spring on plants that are going to fail by August. Your one tap puts this information in front of someone who needs it. Someone who's killed the same annual 3 years in a row and has no idea these 17 plants exist. That's worth 1 second of your time. Plant UE6, Hosta Summon Substance. Hostas are actually more beautiful in containers than in ground plantings. Not equally beautiful, more beautiful. And the reason is specific. Containers eliminate slugs, the primary destroyer of hosta foliage in ground plantings. Containers eliminate drainage problems. Hostas rot in poorly draining ground soil but thrive in well-managed container mix. And containers give you portability. You move them to your best display location in summer and to a protected spot before hard freeze in fall. You're not compromising hostas by growing them in pots. You're giving them better conditions than the ground provides. Top varieties, sum and substance. Enormous chartreuse gold leaves up to 18 inches across that glow and shade like they're lit from inside. Halcyon, powder blue foliage, naturally slug-resistant, stays clean all season. Patriot, deep green leaves with crisp white margins that look hand-painted. Zones 3-9, one of the widest cold hardiness ranges of any shade perennial available to American gardeners. In zones 3-5, move containers against a protected wall or into an unheated garage before hard freeze. In zones 8-9, morning sun only. Afternoon shade is essential for keeping foliage clean through summer heat. A hosta in a well-managed container doesn't need to be replaced ever. It divides naturally every few years. You separate it into 2 or 3 plants that go into fresh containers with fresh soil mix. I have container hostas entering their 12th year. The original $3 plant has now produced enough divisions to fill 8 containers. That's the mathematics of perennial gardening that annual gardeners never get to experience, and it's one of the most satisfying things in this entire hobby. Plant Aelie 7, Coral Bells Heuchera. Heuchera is available in burgundy, silver, lime green, caramel, orange, and near black, more color range than most flowering plants, and that color is present from the moment the plant breaks dormancy in spring until hard freeze in fall, or year-round in zones 7-9, where it stays evergreen. You're not waiting for bloom season. You have color in your containers from day one. Top varieties: Palace Purple, deep burgundy leaves that appear almost black in certain light, one of the most dramatic foliage effects available. Lime Ricky, electric chartreuse that illuminates shady corners like no other plant can. Caramel, warm amber orange tones that shift throughout the season, looks genuinely different every month. Zones 4-9, reliably cold hardy. In zones 4-6, the foliage may flatten during hard freezes but rebounds cleanly in spring. In zones 7-9, it stays evergreen and provides container color and structure all 12 months of the year. Most people place it in deep shade and then wonder why the color fades. Heuchera produces its most intense foliage color in bright indirect light or 2-3 hours of gentle morning sun. Not deep shade. The deeper the shade, the more washed out the color becomes. Move your Heuchera containers to where they catch morning light and watch the color intensity change within 2 weeks. That one adjustment makes more difference than any fertilizer, any soil amendment, or any other intervention you could make. Subscribe Prompt EO2. Subscribe to this channel right now. And I want to tell you exactly why that matters beyond the standard reason. Every week I put out content built specifically around what American gardeners actually struggle with. Not generic advice that works in theory, but specific, zone-aware, experience-based information that works in your actual yard, in your actual climate. If you're in your 50s or 60s and you spent too many springs replacing plants that didn't make it through winter, this channel exists for you specifically. Hit subscribe. It's free. It's always been free. And the information keeps coming every single week, whether you're ready for it or not. Make sure YouTube delivers it to you. Plant Av8 Astilbe. When people see an astilbe in bloom, they assume it's difficult. It produces feathery plumes that look like something from a professional florist arrangement. And people automatically assume that level of beauty requires that level of effort. It doesn't. And in containers, astilbe performs better than it does in any ground planting you will ever see. In the ground, astilbe is entirely dependent on whatever moisture the surrounding soil holds. In a dry summer, ground-planted astilbe struggles. The plumes come in smaller and the bloom period shortens. In a container, you control exactly how much water the plant receives. That control produces bigger plumes, longer bloom periods, and cleaner foliage than open ground planting in the same garden. The container isn't a compromise for this plant. It's an upgrade. Top varieties: Bridal Veil, pure white plumes that glow in shade with an elegance that stops people mid-conversation. Fennel, deep red flowers rising above dark bronze foliage, one of the most dramatic color combinations available in shade container gardening. Sprite, compact shell pink, perfect for smaller containers, has won more awards than almost any other Astilbe variety in American horticulture. Zones 3-8, fully cold hardy, returns reliably every spring with more flowering stems than the previous season. Unlike most drought-tolerant perennials on this list, Astilbe genuinely prefers consistent moisture, which containers make straightforward to manage. Morning sun with afternoon shade is the ideal placement in zones 7-8. After blooming ends, don't cut the spent plumes immediately. Left standing through fall, they transition to a warm, russet brown that provides genuine container interest into November, then cut them back in late fall or early spring. Either timing works perfectly fine. Plant AU9, Japanese painted fern. This fern makes people stop walking and ask what it is every single time. The silver and burgundy coloring looks like someone painted each frond individually by hand. It's completely natural, it's completely effortless to grow, and it does something in a shady container arrangement that no other plant on this list can do. It adds a metallic, almost luminous quality that makes everything around it look more intentional. Top varieties: burgundy lace, more pronounced purple tones than the standard variety, most dramatic of all painted fern options. Ghost, nearly pure silver, almost luminous in deep shade, one of the most visually striking foliage plants you can put in a container regardless of price point. Classic Pictum, silver gray with a burgundy midrib running down each frond, remains one of the best performing varieties after decades of availability. Zones 3-8 dies back completely in winter and returns reliably in spring with more fronds. Here's one specific thing most people get wrong. Do not cut back the old fronds in fall. Leave them standing through winter. They provide natural insulation for the crown through hard freezes. Remove them in early spring when you see fresh growth emerging from the base. That timing protects the plant through its most vulnerable period. Compare Japanese painted fern directly to standard green ferns in containers. Standard green ferns look exactly like what they are. Japanese painted fern looks like something from a designer's arrangement. The care requirements are completely identical. The visual result is in a different category entirely. If you're growing a fern in a container, grow one that earns its space every single day it sits on your porch. Plant Balbuchin wintergreen Gaultheria procumbens. This is the plant that proves container gardening doesn't stop when summer ends. While every other perennial on your porch goes dormant, wintergreen is changing color, holding structure, and preparing to produce bright red berries that last through snow. In spring, it produces clusters of small white bell-shaped flowers. Through summer, the thick glossy leaves provide bold container structure. In fall, those leaves begin transitioning to deep burgundy red as temperatures drop, and through winter, the evergreen foliage holds its form and color, and those bright red berries appear, while every other container around it looks empty and forgotten. Zones 3-8. Tolerates deep shade, drought, poor soil, and temperatures well below zero once established. In zones 3-4, the winter color display is actually most dramatic. The coldest temperatures produce the deepest burgundy tones, and the contrast against snow or frost is genuinely spectacular. I have wintergreen containers that haven't been fertilized once since planting, watered only when remembered, which in winter means almost never. They've never been divided. Every single spring they return with fresh foliage and flowers before I've even thought about opening any other container for the season. That's the standard every plant on this list meets, and wintergreen meets it with less effort than almost any of them. Share prompt. Here's something I want you to do right now. Think of one person in your life who keeps spending money at the garden center every spring, keeps losing plants by July, and keeps thinking the problem is them. It's not them. It's the plants they're choosing. Send this video to that person right now. You don't need a message, just the link. That one action could save them years of frustration and hundreds of dollars. Hit share. Do it before you forget. Plant AWE 11, Black-Eyed Susan Rudbeckia. This plant blooms from July through October, attracts goldfinches directly to your containers, and gets more floriferous every year it grows. It also requires almost nothing from you after the first season. One mature black-eyed Susan produces between 80 and 120 simultaneous blooms at peak flowering, not over the course of the season. At one time, the mass of golden yellow against dark centers creates a color impact in containers that's almost impossible to replicate with any other single plant at the same price point. Top varieties: Goldsturm, the benchmark variety, award-winning, reliable, compact enough for containers, blooming continuously July through September. Prairie Sun, yellow petals with green centers instead of dark, a fresher, more contemporary look. Cherry Brandy, unusual copper-orange tones that set it completely apart from every other yellow flowering perennial. Zones 3-9. Here's the performance fact most people miss. Black-eyed Susan performs better in its second and third year than as a new planting. The root system strengthens over winter and produces more flowering stems each successive season. A plant you buy this spring will be more impressive next summer, and even more impressive the summer after that. You're not just buying a plant, you're making a compounding investment in your container garden. Leave the seed heads standing through fall and winter. Goldfinches, chickadees, and housefinches feed on them actively from October through February. Your container becomes a wildlife feeding station that costs nothing to operate after the plant is established. Plant B-Word 12, Lamb's Ear Stachys byzantina. Here's the plant I told you about at the beginning, the one that gets more beautiful the less you do to it. And I want you to understand exactly why, because the science behind it is one of the most genuinely fascinating things in container gardening. Lamb's ear originates from rocky, sun-baked hillsides in Turkey and Iran. The leaves are covered in dense silver-white hairs. Those hairs aren't decorative, they're a survival system. They reflect intense sunlight to prevent the leaf from overheating. They trap a thin layer of dry air against the leaf surface to slow moisture loss. When you overwater lamb's ear, those hairs flatten against the leaf, trap moisture instead of air, and the plant rots from the outside in. When you underwater it, the hairs stay upright, stay silver, and the plant becomes more striking with every week of drought. Neglect is not a mistake with this plant. It's the correct growing technique. Top varieties: big ears, leaves up to 6 inches long, most dramatic variety for container display. Helen von Stein rarely produces flowers, which means all energy goes into producing the silver foliage. Silky Fleece, smaller and more compact, perfect for mixed container arrangements. Zones 4-8. In zones 9-10, provide afternoon shade. The dense hairs can manage intense sun, but extreme southern heat combined with humidity creates conditions outside what the plant evolved to handle. Put lamb's ear next to almost any other container plant, and it does something those plants can't do. It invites touch. People reach out and brush it without thinking. That tactile quality combined with the silver color makes it one of the most commented on plants in any container garden. And you achieve all of that by watering it less than anything else on your patio. Plant EB13, Daylily hemerocallis. Each daylily flower lasts exactly 1 day. Each plant produces 30 to 50 buds per stem. The math means continuous color for months from a plant that asks for almost nothing after the first season. Blooms continuously from June through September. Multiplies naturally every 3 to 4 years. Divides itself into additional plants you separate and move into fresh containers at zero cost. Available in every color except true blue and pure white, top varieties. Stella de Oro, the gold standard for containers, compact, reblooming from spring through frost, universally reliable across American climates. Happy Returns, pale yellow, slightly more heat tolerant. Purple de Oro delivers the same compact, reliable growth in deep purple. Zones 3-9. Evergreen varieties in zones 7-9 retain foliage through mild winters. Dormant varieties in zones 3-6 die back completely and return with full vigor every spring. Comment prompt DO2. Drop in the comments, what color daylily do you have or want in your containers? Because the variety selection is genuinely overwhelming, and I want to know what American gardeners are actually drawn to most. Plant DU14, ornamental grass, Calamagrostis Karl Forster. No other container plant does what ornamental grass does. movement, sound, 4-season structure, 0 maintenance after the first year. Spring brings fresh green vertical structure back to containers. Summer develops the characteristic wheat-colored feathery plumes. Fall transitions to warm gold while seed heads feed birds actively. Winter provides standing architectural structure. The only container plant that looks intentional in January when everything else looks abandoned. Top varieties. Carl Forster Feather Reed Grass. Stands narrow and upright at 4-5 feet. Most architectural container grass available. Winner of the Perennial Plant of the Year Award. Morning Light Miscanthus. Fine silver-edged leaves with graceful arching form and pink plumes in fall. Blue Fescue. Forms compact blue-gray mounds at 10 to 12 inches. Perfect for smaller containers. Carl Forster Hardy in zones 4-9. Morning Light in zones 5-9. Blue Fescue in zones 4-8. Cut ornamental grasses back to 4-6 inches in late February. That's the complete maintenance requirement for the entire year. One task, 5 minutes, then watch it return taller and fuller than the season before. Plant Ebu 15, Coneflower Echinacea. Native plant. Medicinal history going back centuries. Blooms for 4 months. Seeds that feed birds through winter. Virtually indestructible in containers. Coneflower does more for your yard than any other single plant on this entire list. Flowers from June through September with minimal deadheading. Seed heads left standing through fall and winter feed goldfinches, chickadees, and house finches. Documented by the National Wildlife Federation as one of the top 5 bird-feeding native plants in America. Self-seeds into surrounding containers, giving you free plants every season. Top varieties. Magnus Purple, the classic larger flower heads than the wild species, more upright habit, incredibly reliable. White Swan, pure white with orange centers, slightly more shade tolerant than purple varieties. Hot Papaya, produces double orange-red flowers, the most dramatic modern variety available. Zones 3-9, in zones 4-5, place containers against a protected south-facing wall during the coldest weeks. In zones 7-9, bloom season can extend into early winter in mild years. Most gardeners spend winter looking at empty containers. Coneflower gardeners spend winter looking at seed heads covered in goldfinches. That difference costs exactly the same amount of effort. Plant AB16 Hellebore Ice and Roses series. This plant blooms in snow. While every other plant in your containers is dormant, Hellebore is producing flowers. Blooms from December through April, the longest single bloom period of any perennial available to American gardeners. Flowers in white, pink, burgundy, yellow, and near black. Evergreen foliage provides 12-month container structure. Thick, deeply divided, glossy leaves that look architectural year-round without any intervention. Top varieties, Ice and Roses Red, deep burgundy flowers blooming December through March. Wedding Party, pure white double flowers blooming January through April. Penny's Pink, soft pink with darker veining, one of the most elegant hellebore varieties available in the American market. Zones 4-9. In zones 4-5, place containers against a protected south-facing wall during the coldest weeks. In zones 7-9, bloom season extends from November through April, giving you 5 full months of winter flowers. Most gardeners spend winter looking at empty containers. Hellebore gardeners spend winter looking at flowers. That difference costs exactly the same amount of effort. Plant AB 17, Evergreen Sedum, Autumn Fire. The final plant on this list makes your containers look intentional and designed. Spring, tight rosettes of fresh blue-green emerge clean and sculptural. Summer growth fills the container and stems strengthen. Fall, flower heads transition from pink to deep copper red, the peak ornamental value of the entire year. Winter, dried seed heads and sturdy stems hold structure through frost and snow, providing genuine architectural interest when nothing else does. Zones 3-9. Completely drought-tolerant once established. Containers go weeks without water in winter with 0 damage, never needs dividing, gets more attractive and substantial every year without any intervention. Between Hellebore and Evergreen Sedum, you have winter containers that look professionally designed. Both plants got there by being almost completely ignored from October through March. We're not ending here. You can plant every single one of these 17 perennials and still fail if you don't know 3 specific things. These are the mistakes that kill more container plants than drought, cold, and neglect combined. Secret A1, drainage kills more plants than drought. The #1 killer of container perennials in America is not underwatering. It's overwatering combined with poor drainage. Roots sitting in waterlogged soil cannot access oxygen. They suffocate and rot, and by the time you see damage in the foliage, it's already too late. Every container needs a minimum of 3 half-inch drainage holes, a 2-inch layer of coarse gravel at the base before adding soil. Never place saucers under drought-tolerant perennials. Water should drain visibly within 15-20 seconds of application. If it pools longer than 30 seconds, your mix is too dense and your roots are already at risk. Secret DO2 container size determines everything. A perennial in a 10-inch container needs water every 1-2 days in summer. The same plant in a 16-inch container needs water every 3-4 days. The same plant in a 24-inch container needs water once to twice weekly. Minimum size for every perennial on this list, 16 inches diameter. Anything smaller defeats the entire purpose of low-maintenance gardening. In winter, small containers freeze solid. A perennial in a 10-inch pot in Zone 5 has almost no insulation between its roots and a hard freeze. The same plant in a 24-inch container has thermal mass that protects roots through temperatures that would kill them in a smaller pot. Container size isn't just about growth, it's about winter survival. Secret LO3, the soil mix that does half your work. Never use standard garden soil, too heavy. Poor drainage, never use cheap potting mix, mostly bark. Holds too much moisture. The correct recipe, 50 IU quality potting mix, 30 IE coarse perlite, 20 SE compost. Drains well, holds enough moisture, feeds slowly through the season without synthetic fertilizer. Each spring, remove the top 2 inches and replace with fresh compost mixed with slow-release granular fertilizer. 10 minutes per container. Once per year, that's the complete annual soil maintenance for every plant on this list. Final words. Here's what I want to say directly before this video ends. If you're in your 50s, 60s, or beyond, you've spent enough summers replacing plants that were never going to make it. You've spent enough money on annuals that looked beautiful in April and were dead by July. Subscribe to this channel right now, because every single week I put out content built specifically to make your garden easier, more beautiful, and more rewarding without asking more of your time. Free. Always will be. Now, tell me in the comments, which 3 plants from this list are you adding to your containers this season, and what state are you gardening in? Your zone matters, and I want to make sure the advice you act on actually fits your climate. Now go fill those containers.